The kitchen smelled like warm vanilla and cinnamon, just the way Ethan liked it. Lena wiped her flour-covered hands on her apron and peeked into the oven. The cake had risen perfectly, golden and soft. She smiled, pleased with herself. The candles on the table flickered gently, casting long shadows on the walls. A jazz playlist hummed low in the background, looping a tune that had played on their first date 7 years ago. She glanced at the clock. 4:43 p.m. He said he'd be home by 7. She adjusted the silverware, smoothed the tablecloth, then sat on the edge of the sofa, checking her phone for the 4th time. No texts, no missed calls, just the silence stretching longer than it should. When the key finally turned in the front door lock at 8:11, Lena stood up too quickly. Her heart thudded. Ethan stepped inside, tugging off his coat with one hand and pulling at his tie with the other. "Hey," he said flatly, avoiding her eyes. "You're late," she replied, trying to sound casual. "Got caught up," he muttered, dropping his keys in the bowl by the door. "Work stuff." She walked over to hug him, but paused mid-step. A strong scent clung to him, something floral, too expensive to be her perfume. Beneath it, smoke. Not cigarettes. A cigar? Or maybe incense. Something unfamiliar. Something wrong. "I made dinner," she said, forcing a smile. "Your favorite roast lamb and the spice cake." "Appreciate it," Ethan said, brushing past her toward the bathroom. "Give me a minute." She watched him disappear down the hallway, then turned back to the flickering candles. The jazz song ended. The room felt colder than before. They ate in near silence. Ethan barely touched his cake. Lena pretended not to notice how often he checked his phone under the table. She tried to laugh at an old memory, their beach honeymoon, the time he got stung by a jellyfish, but the moment slid past like oil over water. He didn't look up. By 9:30, he said he had emails to send and vanished into the study. Lena sat alone at the table, staring at the untouched slice of cake across from her. She didn't know it yet, but this night, this cake, would be the beginning of the end. Lena didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Ethan's muffled typing through the closed study door. Around 2 a.m., the house finally went still. But even then, her thoughts refused to quiet. By morning, he was already gone. She told herself she'd let it go. Maybe he really had been working. Maybe she was overthinking. But when she went to grab the vacuum from the hallway cabinet, a black tablet fell out and hit the floor. Ethan's old one, the one he used to take everywhere before switching to a newer model, still had a case worn at the edges. Curiosity prickled. She pressed the power button. The screen lit up. Passcode required. She tried his birthday. Then their anniversary. Incorrect. Try again. She tried again. The name of his old college. Their wedding song. Their dog's name. Nothing. On the 7th try, her fingers hesitated. The name had floated through her mind all night. Not hers, but from something Ethan had muttered in his sleep weeks ago. She hadn't thought much of it at the time. Erica, she typed it in, unlocked. Her breath caught in her throat. The home screen loaded slowly. The wallpaper was a photo of an unfamiliar lake. Peaceful, isolated. She opened the gallery. The first album was titled E. Inside were dozens of photos. Not of landscapes, or work or anything she expected. They were of her. Not Lena. The other woman, different settings, different dates. In some, she was laughing. In others, she looked directly at the camera, eyes soft, trusting. One image made Lena's stomach twist. It was Erica, asleep, tangled in white sheets that looked eerily familiar. She zoomed in. It was their cabin, her family's cabin, the one Ethan claimed he never used anymore. She backed out and opened the Notes app. There were journal entries. Some were written by Ethan, others by Erica. The most recent note was dated 6 months ago. He said he'd leave her soon, that he loved me. I believed him. Maybe that makes me stupid. But love makes you do stupid things. Lena's hands trembled. She stared at the screen, feeling her pulse hammering in her neck. She closed the tablet. No tears came. Only a cold, expanding space in her chest where something used to live. And for the first time in years, Lena didn't feel like the one being watched. She felt like the one who was about to start watching. Lena waited until Ethan came home the next night. The tablet was gone, hidden under a pile of winter coats in the guest room closet. but the images were burned into her mind. Erica's smile, the sheets that lake, the journal entry. She kept dinner simple. No music, no candles. Just pasta and a quiet kitchen filled with the ticking of the wall clock. He walked in like nothing was wrong, kissed her on the cheek. Cold lips, cold hands, so, she said evenly, handing him a plate. Do you want to tell me who Erica is? His fork froze midway to his mouth. What? Erica. She met his eyes. The woman in the pictures on your old tablet. The one you said you stopped using 2 years ago. He blinked, then laughed, quick, dismissive. You're snooping through my stuff now? That's what this is? I'm asking you a question. Ethan leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. She was just someone from work. It was nothing. You don't take women you barely know to my family's cabin, Lena snapped. She was in our bed, Ethan. He shook his head slowly, like he was trying to calm a child. You don't know what you saw. That tablet's years old. You're twisting this. You always do this when you get anxious. I'm not anxious, she said, her voice tightening. I'm not imagining pictures and journal entries. He stood, walked around the table, and knelt beside her. His voice dropped low, like syrup over a knife. You're stressed. Maybe overwhelmed. I know it's been hard lately. Let's not make it harder. His hand touched hers. Warm now, almost tender. But Lena didn't move. She let him say whatever he needed to say. She let him convince himself it was over. And later that night, when he fell asleep beside her like nothing happened, she climbed out of bed and opened a locked drawer in the hallway desk. Inside was an old leather-bound notebook she hadn't touched in years. She flipped to a blank page and wrote, Erica, password, journal entries, cabin. He lied. He always lies. She underlined it twice. Then she closed the book, slid it back into the drawer, and stood in the dark hallway, listening to his breath from the bedroom. If there were lies, there had to be more, and somewhere in the past, she knew, a truth was waiting, buried beneath the silence. The notebook stayed in the drawer, but Lena wrote in it every night, sometimes just a word, a detail, other times a question she was too afraid to ask out loud. She began tracing back the steps, not just of Ethan's lies, but of their entire life together. From the beginning, things had moved fast. Too fast. They met at a bookstore downtown. He had been charming, older, confident in a way that made her feel safe. Wanted. She remembered how he brought her coffee the morning after their first date, how he left sticky notes on her mirror that said, You're my home. Back then, she thought it was love. Now she wasn't sure it wasn't just calculation. It started small, missing dinner with friends because Ethan just wanted a quiet night, then avoiding family visits because they judged too much. Lena had laughed it off. It's us against the world, she used to say. But now the world had grown very small and very quiet. One night, curled up with her journal, Lena wrote, He made me feel like the only person in the room, and then slowly made sure I was the only person in my life. The more she wrote, the more the name Erica appeared. That night, Lena couldn't sleep. She opened her laptop and searched Erica plus missing plus cabin. Nothing. She added local news. Still nothing. Then, without much hope, she typed in the full name from one of the journal entries. Erica Voss. There it was, a local news article. Dated 5 years ago, teacher's aide missing after weekend trip. Last seen near Pine. Hollow Lake. Lena's breath caught. The cabin sat just 2 miles from Pine Hollow. She clicked on the photo in the article. Same face. Same dark eyes. Same soft smile from the photos on Ethan's tablet. The article mentioned her boyfriend, at the time unnamed in the report, and noted she had told friends she was going away with him for the weekend. She was never seen. Again, there were no suspects, no body, no leads. The comments section had long since gone cold. Just a few old speculations. Ran off. Suicide. He probably killed her and buried her in the woods. The usual internet noise, but Lena knew better. Erica hadn't run. She hadn't vanished. She had trusted the wrong man. Lena closed her laptop and stared out the window at the night. Wind rattled the trees. Somewhere out there, the truth was still buried. And if Ethan had lied about Erica, what else had he buried? By Friday, Ethan said he had a work retreat out of town. Last minute, just a couple of nights. Lena nodded like she believed him, but she'd already found the bag in the trunk, camping gear, a bottle of wine, 2 glasses. He left at dawn. An hour later, she followed. She kept her distance, headlights off on back roads. It was easier than she expected. He wasn't looking for a tail. He never imagined she'd do this. The drive led to Pine Hollow, the same forest named in the article. Just past mile marker 13, he turned off onto a gravel path Lena hadn't noticed before. Trees swallowed the car whole. She waited 5 minutes, then crept forward. The cabin looked like something out of a forgotten postcard. Moss on the roof, shutters hanging crooked. A place that should have felt nostalgic, but instead it breathed like a held-in scream. Ethan's car sat parked in front. The house was still, no lights on, no voices, no second car. She stayed low, moving around to the back where she knew the spare key was hidden beneath a rotted flower pot. Her hand shook as she slid it into the lock. Inside, it smelled faintly of damp wood and mildew. Dust coated most surfaces. No sign of life. No warmth, except on the mantel she saw a picture frame turned backward. She flipped it. Erica, sitting on the edge of the dock out back, feet in the water, hair tied up, smiling at whoever was behind the camera. Lena's stomach twisted. She wandered deeper in, her footsteps barely making a sound on the creaky floorboards. In the bedroom, the air turned colder. There on the nightstand, her necklace. The silver one she'd lost years ago and thought nothing of. She picked it up. How did it end up here? And then, the mattress, stained, faint but dark, something that had been scrubbed once badly. She stared at it for a long time, frozen. Her breath fogged the air. A floorboard creaked upstairs. Lena jolted. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She listened. Nothing. The wind? Or she didn't wait to find out. She backed out the way she came, locking the door behind her, hands shaking. Back in the car, she stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror. She hadn't just followed Ethan. She'd stepped into the past he thought he buried. And now, she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't going to let it stay buried. After the cabin, Lena couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't think without hearing her own pulse pounding in her ears. She needed proof, not just for herself, for whoever might have believed Erica, and for the version of Lena that had spent years making excuses for Ethan's disappearing acts and mood swings. She remembered an old voice recorder from her college journalism days, shoved in a drawer somewhere. She found it, still working, still charged. The next morning, while Ethan showered, she crept into the garage and tucked the recorder beneath the driver's seat of his car. Wedged inside a flap of torn fabric she knew he'd never notice. Then she waited. He left for meetings, around 10. She watched his car disappear down the road, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her fingers felt numb. Hours passed. When he returned, he barely acknowledged her, said he was tired, skipped dinner. After he went to bed, she slipped outside in her robe and retrieved the device. Back in the study, she plugged in her headphones and hit play. The static cleared, male voice. Ethan. No, she doesn't know. Not everything. A pause. A low chuckle. Ethan. She's asking questions, though. Went quiet for a while, now she's poking again. It's like she's starting to remember. Lena's breath caught. Unknown male voice. You said she wouldn't. Ethan. I'll handle it. Same way I handled the last one. Silence. Ethan, lower. You forget, I know what she's capable of, too. The recording ended. Lena sat still for a long time. Not blinking. Not breathing. Handled. The last one. Was he talking about Erica? Or someone else? Or was he talking about her? She rewound the audio and listened again. Ethan's voice wasn't angry. It was calm, calculated, like this was all part of a plan. She stared at the recorder, heart thudding in her throat. No names, no specifics, but she knew what she heard. And now someone else knew she was asking questions. Someone Ethan trusted. Someone who had helped before. She copied the file onto a flash drive, labeled it simply insurance. Whatever happened next, she wouldn't face it unarmed. The question was no longer whether Ethan had done something. It was how many times and how long he'd been getting away with it. The next morning, Lena called in sick to work. Her voice barely held steady as she spoke to her manager. She hung up before he could ask questions. She didn't have answers. Not yet. She packed the flash drive, the notebook, and a single photo of Erica into her purse, and drove across town to the local precinct. The waiting room was dull and fluorescent. A mother sat in the corner with a crying toddler. The vending machine buzzed. When she gave her name to the front desk and said it was about the Erica Voss case, the woman behind the glass blinked, then disappeared for a few minutes. A door opened. "Lena Wells?" She turned. A tall, broad-shouldered man in his late 40s stepped out, gray creeping into his beard. His eyes were tired but alert. "I'm Detective Monroe. Come on back." His office was cluttered but lived in. Coffee cups, files, a framed photo of two teens on his desk. He gestured for her to sit. "I worked Erica's case 5 years ago," he said, closing the door. "Didn't expect to hear that name again." "I think I have something you need to hear," Lena replied, pulling out the flash drive. He watched her carefully as she plugged it into his laptop and played the audio. She didn't look at him while Ethan's voice filled the room. Calm, eerie, chilling. When it ended, Monroe leaned back, exhaling slowly. "You know who he's talking about?" Lena asked. Monroe nodded. "Sounds like your husband's done this before." He opened a drawer, pulled out a worn case file. A familiar photo of Erica stared back at her. She came in to report someone was following her. Wouldn't give us a name, then disappeared 3 weeks later. We questioned people, including a man she'd been seeing. Never enough to stick. He wouldn't give us anything. No prints, no motive. No body. Lena's voice trembled. "You remember his name?" Monroe flipped to the intake form. "Ethan Wells." He looked at her now, really looked. "You're married to him." She nodded once. He sighed. "I believe you. But we still don't have a body. What you brought, it's something. But it's not enough to arrest. Then what do I do?" He closed the file slowly. "You be careful. You keep documenting everything. You stay alert. Because if he's done this before..." He paused, leaning forward. "He's not going to stop now. And you're closer than he thinks." Lena swallowed hard. She left the station feeling like a thin sheet of glass. Intact. But cracking along invisible lines. Back home. Ethan was already waiting, smiling, too calm. "Long day?" he asked. She nodded, forcing a smile. Just needed to get out for a bit. As she walked past him, she felt it. He knew. She waited until nightfall. Ethan had just finished dinner, mistake rare, like he liked it. She barely touched hers. He asked twice if something was wrong, but she smiled through it, eyes tired but steady. When he retreated to the living room to sip his scotch and scroll through his phone, Lena slipped into the hallway closet. From the coat pocket where she'd hidden it, she pulled out the recorder, fully charged, switched it on, slid it into her back pocket, then she walked in. He looked up. "You've been quiet lately, have I?" she said calmly, sitting across from him. "You've been watching me, haven't you?" He tilted his head. "Digging around. That detective, what's his name?" "Monroe," she said. His smile faltered. "Ah, so that's what this is." Lena folded her hands in her lap. Erica was real. She didn't run. She didn't just disappear. Ethan chuckled, but there was no humor in it. Just venom. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know enough," she said. "I've heard the recordings. I've seen the pictures. The journal entries." He stood suddenly, knocking over his glass. Liquid spilled across the floor, seeping into the rug like blood. "You went through my things?" he growled. She stood too, unmoved. "You lied to me. For years." The tension snapped. He grabbed the lamp beside him and hurled it at the wall. The crash was deafening. Shards flew. Mirrors shattered behind it, splintering their reflections into jagged pieces. "You think you're brave now?" Ethan's voice trembled with rage. "You think you're some kind of hero?" His face twisted. Erica was a mistake. She didn't know when to stop. Lena stared at him. Then came the slap, sudden, sharp, open-handed. Her head jerked to the side. Her cheek burned, but she didn't cry. She turned back to him slowly, eyes empty. "I knew you'd hit me one day," she whispered. "I just needed you to prove it." He blinked, confused, and she walked past him, stepping over the broken glass, not looking back. In her pocket, the recorder blinked red. Everything had been captured. His words, the threats, the blow. She entered the bathroom, shut the door and locked it. Blood from a glass shard on her palm dripped into the sink. but her voice, as she whispered to herself, was steady. He won't do this to anyone else. Not again. 2 days after the slap, Lena met Detective Monroe in a parking lot just off Pine Hollow Road. She handed him the flash drive with the new recording, Ethan's rage. The confession, the blow, and said only, "He's gone for the weekend. Now's the time." They drove in silence. The forest loomed ahead, dark and skeletal under a heavy October sky. The air was colder than it should have been, heavy with rot and the weight of something long buried. Lena unlocked the front door of the cabin with a key she'd stolen from Ethan's briefcase. The place was still, just as she'd left it. Only this time she didn't flinch. "Basement?" Monroe asked. Lena nodded. "Behind the pantry shelves. There's a panel." Monroe pulled a flashlight from his jacket and followed her into the kitchen. She pressed her fingers against the warped wood of the back wall. It clicked slightly, a false panel. Together they slid it open to reveal a narrow door, concealed in shadows. The basement stairs creaked beneath their weight. The air shifted, colder now, damp and sharp, filled with the scent of mildew and something worse. Death. The flashlight swept across the room. Dust-draped furniture, old tarps, tools. Nothing unusual until Monroe paused at the far wall. There, he said, half covered by a rolled carpet, was a patch of disturbed earth. Different color, softer texture. Monroe knelt, pulled back the rug. They both stared. The soil had been recently turned, though poorly disguised. Monroe pulled gloves from his pocket and slowly began to dig with his hands. 3 inches down. His fingers hit something solid. It was a bracelet, delicate silver. Engraved with the letter E. Lena's knees buckled. She wore it all the time, she whispered. She never took it off. Monroe didn't speak. He reached deeper, then bones, small, fragile. Human, the air turned colder still. Like the house itself had exhaled something long held in. Monroe stood, his face pale. "We'll call it in. This is enough. It's over." But just as he moved to step away, something caught his eye, barely visible beside the grave, a tiny dirt-covered object. He picked it up carefully, turned it over. A child's toy, a plastic horse scuffed and sun-bleached. The kind sold in dollar bins, something no adult would bring here. Monroe looked at Lena. "Was there ever any mention of a kid?" She shook her head slowly. "No, never," his voice dropped. "Then whose was this?" For a moment, the silence felt like it might swallow them both. The grave wasn't just Erica's, and Ethan's secrets ran deeper than they'd ever imagined. The story hit the headlines before the trial even began. Wife exposes husband in cold. Case murder, hidden grave found at remote cabin. Real-life nightmare. The woman who brought down her husband. The Wells case trended for weeks. People called Lena brave. Some called her a liar. Others dissected her marriage online like it was a TV series. Screen-recorded courtroom footage, reaction videos, conspiracy threads. But none of it mattered the way it did when she stood on the witness stand, looking Ethan in the eye. He was calm, hair combed, suit pressed, no handcuffs in front of the jury. Just a soft smile he saved for cameras. The prosecutor laid everything out. The bracelet. The basement. The audio recordings. The journal entries. The slap, the soil samples. The missing women. 'Cause Erica hadn't been the first. Nor the last. Lena hadn't known that part. Not until they presented forensic connections between Ethan and 2 other women, who had disappeared under unusual romantic circumstances, one in another state, one in their own city. All had ties to him. All had been reported missing after a weekend away. The child's toy found by Erica's grave? Still unanswered. No child had ever been reported missing with her. No DNA found on it, a shadow of another secret buried deeper still. But it was Lena's testimony that carried weight. Her voice shook, but she didn't look away once. "I wanted to believe the best in him," she said softly. "I ignored the lies, the patterns, the way he chipped away at my world, until I was alone with only him." That wasn't love. It was control. The courtroom sat silent. Not even camera shutters clicked. "I didn't leave when I should have," she admitted. "But I will never be quiet again." Ethan didn't flinch. He didn't have to. His lawyer objected, redirected, reshaped the narrative. Tried to spin it into emotional instability, into a jealous wife's vendetta, but the evidence told its own story. Day after day, the gallery filled strangers, press, survivors of their own silent wars. Some wept, some took notes, and when Monroe took the stand, describing the soil under his nails and the bracelet in his hand, the weight in the room shifted. Ethan's smile finally broke. Outside, cameras flashed. Inside, the jury listened. But Lena wasn't thinking about justice anymore. She was thinking about the plastic toy beside Erica's grave, because now she wondered, who was that child? And what else had Ethan buried? It was quiet in the cemetery that morning. Not silent, never truly silent, but still enough to feel like the air was listening. Lena sat cross-legged by Erica's grave, a worn stone nestled beneath the shade of an old willow tree. The leaves whispered above, swaying like hands brushing secrets into the earth. She placed the small recorder on the grass beside her and hit record. "Welcome back to the woman who saw too much," she began, her voice steady, almost soft. "Today's our final episode." A pause. "And I need to tell you something I haven't said before." The wind tugged at her coat. The sky above was a pale gray. "You've heard the facts by now, the court documents, the audio, the trial. The man I married was a killer. And yes, I helped put him away. But I didn't always feel like a hero." She exhaled. "Because the truth is, I knew about Erica long before the tablet." A distant bird chirped. The recorder blinked red, not everything, not the grave, not the full horror. But I knew her name. I'd seen her picture once, in a box Ethan kept hidden, back when we first moved in together. I asked. He told me she was a friend who died in a car accident. I didn't ask again. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a necklace, Erica's. So when I saw the name on the tablet, something in me didn't break. Woke up. She looked toward the grave, and that's not the worst part. Her voice lowered, the weight of years hanging from every syllable. Because he wasn't the only one who knew how to hide things. Another pause, a long one. The night I found the voice recorder, the first one, I waited until he was asleep and I took it from his car. But I found something else too. In the trunk, her fingers tightened. A small plastic horse, the same one Monroe found beside the grave. Only this one wasn't covered in dirt. She blinked back something, not quite a tear, I realized then. He had taken me to that cabin before, years ago. A weekend I barely remembered. I was dizzy the whole time, sick. I thought it was the altitude. I never knew I was pregnant. She looked down. I never knew the child existed. The recording caught the trembling in her voice. But Ethan did. She stood, brushing the grass from her jeans. Maybe that's why I kept digging. Maybe I wanted to find something that made sense of the guilt I never admitted, even to myself. She reached over and clicked the recorder off, then whispered, "He wasn't the only killer in this story." Fade to black.